boys and girls, students of Buddhist Sunday school and Dhamma classes, parents and grandparents, teachers of Buddhist Sunday school and Dhamma classes, and all youth members. Good morning. May you all be well, happy, and peaceful. Now we are going to continue the story of Buddha Gautama, part 4. If you remember, in the last part, which means part 3, we left at the point of Buddha preaching to King Bimbisara at Rajagaha. And King Bimbisara donated the bamboo grove to Buddha and the monks. And this bamboo grove or Veluvana Park is the first Buddhist monastery in the history of Buddhism. Now, that was where we left off. So, Buddha was enlightened at the age of 35, and then after that, he went around to preach the Dhamma for 45 years. So this part 4 will continue the story of Buddha Gautama, the events, the important happenings, and the preaching of the Dhamma, right? Now, we are going, as usual, to have a PowerPoint with the slides and then the descriptions of the events so that you can understand better and you will find the presentation more interesting. Now, the texts are in English and Chinese, but the narration will be completely in English. So now we are going to launch the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint now from the beginning. Now you see the cover slide that depicts the pictures of certain important things in this part of the story of Buddha Gautama, part 4. You see that all pertains to the Buddha, his life. Imagine he preached for 45 years. He renounced at 29 and then got enlightened at 35 and he passed away at 80. So a lot of happenings and a lot of Dhamma teachings. So now let us go on to the next slide, which is slide number 2 now. This is slide number 2 now. Now let me take off the video. Now let me read first and then comment. So during the Buddha's stay at Rajagaha, there was a well-known teacher of one of the traditional schools. Now, during that time, there was this Brahminism, the early form of Hinduism. And there were many people also who, were on a quest to find the truth. They were quite religious people. And so there were these religious schools with well-known teachers. And at this particular place, Rajagaha, a very important pilgrimage place where the Buddha preached the Heart Sutra. So he was, at one stage staying there, and the king was King Bimbisara, So at this particular place, there was a well-known teacher. And there were two very important students. Later on, you see how they became very important disciples of the Buddha. And these two students were Upatissa and Kolita. Those were their names. And they were among about 200 students under the well-known teacher. And these two friends were actually best friends, Upatissa and Kolita. And they were very keen on the spiritual quest to learn the truth. They wanted to learn more about life and death. So they stayed with the teacher and they learn all that they could learn from the teacher, especially the meditation. So they were very, very keen. And they promised one another, they agreed with each other, that they will search for the highest knowledge, how to be free from all suffering, to be liberated. And if any one of them were to find it, then he would quickly inform and share with the other. That was the promise made by these two friends, Upatissa and Kolita. Now you can see the picture showing this one, just a drawing picture of Upatissa and Kolita. And this is a colored picture. All these are just images, pictures to make the story easier to understand. Now let us go on to slide number 3 now. This is slide number 3. Now, one morning, Upatissa was walking towards Rajagaha. All right. The school actually was not very far away from this very important town in Buddhist pilgrimage, Rajagaha. And on the way there, he met a monk, you see, who looked very peaceful and seemed to be free from all fear. Now, actually, this Upatissa with the friend had left the school already because they had learned already. So they, wanted to learn more. So there was nothing else that the teacher could teach them. So they continued the search for the truth. And one morning, this Upatissa met a monk, And this monk looked so very peaceful and seemed to be free from all fear. This monk actually was the Arahant Asaji. Remember, after enlightenment, the Buddha first preached to the 5 ascetic monks, the 5 who practiced with him where he was struggling for 6 years in asceticism, torturing the bodies and so on. So among them was this person, and he strove on and he became Asaji after Buddha preached. Asaji became an Arahant after Buddha preached to the 5 And actually, eventually, all the 5 disciples or bhikkhus became Arahants. So this was this person, Asaji, one of the 5 former ascetics. So this Upatissa was so drawn to him, So he went towards him and said, "Venerable Master, who is your teacher? And what did he teach you?" And the monk, full of metta, and was so calm, really appealing. The monk replied with a smile, "My teacher is a great sage of the Sakya clan. He is the Buddha, and I practice according to his teaching." So he told this Upatissa that his teacher is a great wise man. Actually, Buddha, the greatest, the wisest, the most compassionate of all, right? Teacher of gods and man. And he actually came from the Sakyan clan, right? He belonged to the Sakyan clan. So that's what this Asaji, Venerable Asaji, told the layperson Upatissa. So he said that he is a disciple now of the Buddha, and he is practicing according to his teaching, the Dhamma. These shows the pictures, right? So this meeting with the Asaji, Upatissa, meeting with the Arahant Asaji. So now we are going to the next slide, which is slide number 4. Now we have slide number 4. And then Upatissa asked Venerable Asaji, what is the teaching of the Buddha? Actually, Asaji had not long been a disciple, right? And he just recently became Arahan. He actually told this person, Upatissa, that he still not used to giving the long Dhamma like the Buddha, but he could tell him very shortly what's the essence. So Asaji replied, I will tell you the meaning of the Buddha's teaching very briefly. The Buddha said that there is a cause for everything, and he also taught how things decay. Actually, basically, he replied about impermanence, right? That whatever rises will fall, will come down, will go away. That is basically the essential principle of impermanence, right? So the different ways of putting it. So if Upatissa, because he had cultivated, and previous lives probably also he had cultivated, so he had what we call the roots of the you can say the Siankin, that means the wise ones already. He got the roots already in the mind. So he was a very intelligent, person. So when he heard this, he understood that already. That whatever comes into existence will also decay. What rises will fall. And because he could see this, he could realize this, he, after listening to this short sentence by the Venerable Asaji, he attained the first stage of enlightenment. He became what we call a Sotapanna, the first stage of Arahanthood, right? That's fantastic, isn't it? That was because, he had cultivated also in previous lives, also he had already just a continuation now. So he thanked the Venerable Asaji and asked him where he might find the Buddha. Asaji told him, and then he left. So these are just pictures showing the meeting between Upatissa and Venerable Asaji. So that is slide number 4. Now we are going to slide number 5. This is slide number 5. So after this encounter or this meeting, Upatissa was filled with happiness and joy and peace, because he had already become a Sotapanna. The first stage of sainthood, there will be 4 stages before you become fully enlightened. First stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage. So then he went to see his good friend Kulita, remember? They were very, very good friends, and they had promised one another, if one were to find the truth already, he must quickly come and share with the other. So of course, he fulfilled the promise. So he went straight to see Kulita, and he told Kulita, his best friend, what the noble monk Venerable Asaji had told him. And instantly, Kulita also had these good roots he had been cultivating this life and previous lives also. So instantly, Kolita also understood the Buddha's teaching and also attained the first stage of enlightenment. That means he became a Sotapanna, the first stage of Arahanthood. So these two friends went to see the Buddha, because Kulita already asked Venerable Asaji where the Buddha was, isn't it? So they could go to see the Buddha. And this picture, a very good picture to show these two very, very keen. Right? They had not been ordained as Buddhist monks yet. First time meeting the Buddha. In fact, Buddha, right? When actually, there were many other disciples, but they just focused on this. So Buddha said, he pointed out when they were coming, that look at these two young men, quite young at the time. So they will become, the Buddha could see already, they will become great monks, they will be my right hand and left hand disciples. They will be the chief disciples. The Buddha already knew already, So then they went to see the Buddha. And the Buddha preached to them. They asked him to accept them as monks. And the Buddha agreed. All right. And very, very fast, after practicing diligently, both of them, Kolita and Upatissa and Kulita. Both of them became arahants, you see. And they took on the Buddhist names already. So one was named the Sariputta and the other Moggallana, right? So now we all know them as Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Moggallana. Now, Venerable Moggallana, just after about 1 week, because he was diligently practiced, he had already attained first stage. So just after 1 week of listening, of practicing, and he was practicing a deep samatha meditation with the psychic powers and so on. After 1 week, he became enlightened already. Sariputta took 2 weeks before he became enlightened. So imagine we struggling, but we are inspired to strive on that you can become enlightened. So this was Sariputta and Moggallana. So Sariputta, chief disciple after Buddha, is next in line in terms of wisdom, right? In terms of wisdom. And he could answer Dhamma questions, preach the Dhamma. So he could consider the right hand, like the commander of Buddha's soldiers, are not literally soldiers, but the Buddha's, team of monks and so on. So Sariputta like a commander already. Just after Buddha, only his wisdom, right? Of course, they are all arahants already. And Moggallana, very famous for his psychic powers. If you are very keen of it, maybe if we have time, we can later on tell the story of Moggallana and Sariputta. Very fascinating and inspiring stories. So let us continue into slide number 6 now. This is slide number 6. So when the Buddha was living at Rajagaha, a conference was held at Veluvana on the full moon of the 3rd month of the year. The Buddha would live in different places. In his preaching, he would walk from village to village. And the most years, especially during the rains retreat, right, the Vasa period, he would spend in the place called Shravasti. Now, Rajagaha, a very beautiful place, and you have also the vulture peak there, the hill, and he was at the top of the hill that the Buddha preached the Heart Sutra. I've been there 3 times, and fantastic, beautiful place where even the Arahant disciples would go to stay in the cave and also to cultivate and also to preach. So, during that conference, there were 1,000, according to this account, 1,250 monks attending the meeting. And they were all arahants already. And all of them arrived on the same day. The Buddha, after enlightenment, had been preaching to so many. Remember I think it was the last part, 2 or 3, where we saw the first 60 arahants. The Buddha asked them to go forth and spread the Dhamma. No 2 monks to walk in the same path or direction. Remember that? So then after that, more and more got converted. Right now, thousands already. So the Buddha reminded these monks that they must practice and teach the Dhamma. And the Buddha emphasized the basic principles, right? The basic principles of the Dhamma, right? And in fact, all Buddhas will teach this. So the essence of this teaching is this: do not do anything bad, do good and purify the mind. I think all Buddhas will teach this essential thing, right? Don't do evil, right? Avoid evil, do good, right? Or you can say do good, avoid evil, and purify your mind. All Buddhas teach this essential thing. And then the rest all connected with this already. And the most important sutta or discourse of or teaching is actually the 4 Noble Truths. So it's connected. So there was this place, Veluvana or Bamboo Grove, and that conference was held. So you see this important message. And you could see during that time, you don't have big buildings, a hall and so on. So it was mostly in the forest area or the rural setting, and the Buddha would sit under the tree, and there would be many disciples, and then also lay people will come to listen. These are the pictures that show this. And during that time, you don't have the microphone or PA system and so on. But the Buddha, being the Buddha, the voice was so fantastic, so great. He could project, and in fact, thousands and thousands could hear. And even the gods from the heaven or the devas could come down to listen to the Buddha. So that was this very inspiring incident or happening. Now let us go on to number 7. This is number 6. Number 7 now. When King Suddhodana learned that his son had become a Buddha and was staying at Rajagaha, he sent an officer to invite the Buddha to Kapilavatthu. I think you remember the place Kapilavatthu, which is actually at the border between India and Lumbini, and Buddha's, his childhood was there, right? He was born in Lumbini, now present day Nepal, but he was last time also in this area of Kapilavatthu. And actually, his father was not really a king, but you can say like a Raja, right? He was maybe of the noble class, and then there were many Rajas, just as now also you have many sultans, but not all the sultans are become the Agong one. Only one Agong, isn't it? So that time there was another king, you see. But they have so used in the accounts to call the father Suddhodana, even though he was not really, which is one of the Rajas. Not all Rajas are, are kings really. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just the way they write. So the father had learned that his son had become a Buddha, and so he was very, very excited and interested. And he was around this area. So he sent the officer to invite the Buddha to this area. Maybe the Buddha was near Kapilavatthu, not far away. So the Buddha said yes, he would visit his family, right? His previous family, his father, right? His stepmother, his wife, right? And then also the only son, when he left the palace, remember? The time the son was born, Rahula, and he has been 7 years already. Now only going back to Kapilavatthu. So one day, the Buddha took his disciples to Kapilavatthu, as he promised. And they arrived in the evening and stayed in the garden outside the city, right? And the next morning, the Buddha and his disciples went to the city to beg for alms and food. And after that, probably he would make his way to the palace, you could call it, or maybe big mansion, his family house, last time. All right. So the Buddha actually went on the alms round with the disciples, with a line of disciples, and this is a picture to show, which also you can see in present day, especially if you visit Buddhist countries like Thailand and Myanmar. You could see early morning when we were in Myanmar, we did the dana for hundreds of monks who came, and then we line up, and then a very, very spectacular scene, all right? So people were just giving out of joy, right? Very happy to give. That is the Buddhist way, right? So you could see this. So in Malaysia also, we have been doing what we call the Pindapat. The Buddha with his disciples going on the alms round as beggars, right? And these actually, there are very good reasons why we have this practice. One would be to cut the ego, to lead a simple life. And the monks' basic job, we can say, would be to cultivate their minds so that they can become arahants, and to teach and preach the Dhamma. And the gift of Dhamma is the greatest gift. So don't think the monks are do nothing. No. Good cultivated monks are very, very busy one. Like Ajahn Brahmawamso or last time Chief Reverend Dhammananda who passed away. Many other good monks. So there's this scene here that you can understand. And this one, I think, is showing returning to Kapila Vastu. This one is just a drawing to show. And during that time also, they would walk, not just unruly, but very, very mindfully. The most senior one, in this case, the Buddha, the enlightened one, would lead the row or the line of monks. And today also, you will see these sort of things. When you have a group of monks, going around. We have done this even in Malaysia, the Dana during their alms rounds, they will be very systematic and orderly and very, very mindful. Very, very touching sort of scene. If you understand. If you don't understand, of course, you will have all the very funny ideas. Say, what, man? Go and beg for food. Why don't they go and earn a living? But that is different. These are renounced people. They already left the worldly life and on the spiritual path, and some have attained arahanthood. And they have even a more important task to perform than your job as as a teacher or as a lawyer and so on. Because they preach the Dhamma, and the Dhamma is the greatest gift, isn't it? So you don't think that they have nothing to do and they are useless. That is because we don't understand, When I was young, I used to think like that also. But after that, I studied more and more. How it's been about 40 years already. So you begin to appreciate. And then when you experience for yourself, right, then you find the real commitment will arise to spread the Dhamma. Now let us go on to slide number 8 already. This is slide number 8. So, word went to the king in his palace that the prince, he actually last time was a prince, but now he's the Buddha. And he with the monks was begging for food in the streets of the town, So the king was very angry and disappointed, right? Very disappointed because he, high class one, Raja actually, Raja with a, big house. You can call it a palace if you want. And with all the servants, with all the attendants, right? So he asked his driver to take him straight to the Buddha. Of course, during that time, you don't have a car, so he would use a carriage, maybe a horse carriage. So the driver took this King Suddhodana straight to see the Buddha. And when he saw the Buddha, he was very angry. So he spoke to him. His son actually, is right? So in an angry way, my son, today you have done the most disgraceful thing to the royal family and me. Have your ancestors ever done such a thing? Have they ever accepted food like beggars? Wow, he was very angry now. Because he like losing face, Bobina the son who is now actually the Buddha, no longer the actual son already, just an ex-son already. Because the Buddha already different already, teacher of gods and men already. Renounce all the worldly things already, isn't it? So he was very angry. He sort of scolded the son. Very disgraceful. You bring bad name to a royal family. All these are worldly things, right? Wants to jaga the face, ego, all those stuff. So your ancestors, your grandfather and all those never did these things like begging for the food, malu like that only. Never accept food like beggars, no. They will, work, eat in the house and so on. Don't give all the lecture. This is actually a scene to show, maybe, just a drawing. And the Buddha and the disciples were on the rounds with their arms folded, isn't it? So he came and scolded. He being a Raja, got the bodyguards, attendants, always holding an umbrella for him, right? So that was this slide, right? Number 8. Now let us move on to number 9. Now, number 9. Now, being the Buddha, he did not react to what the father said. He was very, very calm. He's a Buddha, he would not get angry. He would not scold back or what, very, very calmly. And what did the Buddha say? So the Buddha spoke calmly to his angry father. Father, I am not following the custom of my worldly ancestors. I am following the tradition of the Buddhas of the past. All past Buddhas begged for food to inspire people to follow the teachings. So the answer was like that. I'm no longer following the worldly things already. I've renounced, isn't it? Right? So you already renounced, so you would not follow all those traditions and customs of ordinary people. It's the Buddha now. And the previous Buddhas all also would go around on alms rounds to get the food, to let people have a chance to do good dana or charity or generosity. And also for those who had not become arahants yet in the process, this would cut their ego. The ego becomes a block to your spiritual progress. So a lot of good things will come from that, if you follow the path. So the king, when he heard this, wow, you see already the son who's now the Buddha, so Chuan Yan, so calm, so peaceful, right? So deserving of homage and reverence. So the king calmed down already when he heard Buddha explain all those things. So then the king invited the Buddha and his disciples to go to his palace, that he also wanted to offer food, right? Offer food. And the Buddha, of course, consented, right? And the disciples agreed to go to visit the Buddha's previous family members. These actually are just pictures. The Buddha convinces the Suddhadana. This one just couldn't find a suitable picture, so just to give you an idea that the father. How this picture shows even the stepmother went around and then there were others. It could be, but it doesn't matter. It's just to let you know the idea. And then with the halo there, the Buddha is very inspiring. So now let us go on to number 10 now, the slide. Number 10. So the Buddha with his retinue of disciples went to the palace of the father. So the offering of food was given, of course, being so rich, the king and the stepmother and all those fellows in the palace so rich, they offered fantastic offerings, right? I had experienced this dana when we went on this meditation retreat. It was in Lunas. So breakfast and lunch only, right? Wow, devotees from all over, some even as far as Penang, Lunas in Kedah, what would bring, so much of food, At one occasion, I was just curious, we will be seated there and then the food will be passed around. I started counting, more than 60 already still, so many dishes coming around. People are so joyful to offer the dana to, there were monks and then other lay people. So the food will just be passed around. You take what you want and then pass on. And then after that, of course, there are other, members all would eat food also. You see, very, very inspiring and touching, though. So then I can understand, wow, must be a fantastic, delicious meal. We also experience also, maybe just a fraction of it, but so fantastic already. In MBMC also the same thing. The meditation center in Penang, we had retreats there before. Also a lot of dana, early morning people would bring already. They were happy to do the dana. Now, why people want to do it? Definitely, they must have been feeling very joyful and happy to do it, Not forced, but all voluntary. So then, after finishing, it was customary, the Buddha would give a short Dhamma talk. So he taught the Dhamma to the king, his relatives, right? Of course, also his ex-wife, Yasodhara, and other people, his cousins, and so on, and other people. There are many people listening to the Dhamma. Then, according to this account, he took two of his senior disciples to see Yasodhara. Maybe before giving the the Dhamma. He could be that he went to see the ex-wife Yasodhara, and also to see a person that he had married at the age of 16. Oh, sorry. Yasodhara was the cousin that the Buddha at the time was Siddhartha Gautama married at 16 years old. And then remember, when he left the palace, the only son Rahula was born. Right? So Yasodhara was actually the cousin of Siddhartha Gautama. And Siddhartha married at that young age of 16, right? And then at 29, he left the place. And during that time, he was the birth of the only son, Rahula. And Yasodhara was very sad, of course, to see the ex-husband now a monk. But then the Buddha could see past lives with his psychic powers. And so he compassionately told the ex-wife Yasodhara about the good actions she had done in the past, all the good actions, and then explained the Dhamma to her. Now, this one account that she heard the Buddha differently, whereas other accounts she might be together with the others also. Well, she could have heard from Buddha about her past lives and all the good deeds, and she became very, very interested in the Dhamma really. So not sad really. And later on, she also attained very good heights of spirituality. She had attained I think in the end also maybe one of the stages of sainthood already. The father also, after listening, and then also many other people, right, got good progress after listening to the Dhamma. Okay, so now let us go on to the next one. So then later you find Rahula, who was 7 years old at the time, was ordained by the Buddha. The Buddha actually asked, I think it was Venerable Sariputta, to ordain him because the mother, Yasodhara, asked Rahula to go and ask the Buddha, his father, previously about the father, for his inheritance, since he becomes a monk already, so asked to get the inheritance, the wealth, to pass on to him. But the Buddha was thinking, now what would be the greatest wealth? All those inheritance of mundane things, they are impermanent and so on. So he was convinced that the greatest gift, the greatest wealth he could give was to give him the Dhamma and he becomes a monk. So that's why he ordered this, he asked this Sariputta to ordain Rahula as the first novice. A novice is someone who is in training, a novice monk, but has not yet taken the full vows of a monk or nun. So actually, according to the account, when the Father King Sudarana heard about this, his heart was very painful because the grandson, he loved the grandson. So he told the Buddha that, when you left, I was already so sad, my heart was so broken. And now you also take away my grandson, right? So it's really very painful for me. Next time, whenever you want to ordain, or future monks want to ordain, especially one, a young one, you must make sure permission is obtained from the parents. So the Buddha from that point onwards had this rule among the monks, monastics, that anybody that wants to become a monk must have the consent, permission from the parents. That's how this story went. And then besides Rahula, the Buddha, I told you, preached to the relatives also, isn't it? And he managed to convert his step-brother. Remember? His mother passed away 7 days after he was born, and then he was brought up by his step-mother, Prajapati, the auntie actually. And the auntie also gave birth to a son, and the son was Nanda. That means Buddha's step-brother, right? Step-brother. And then the stepbrother also became a monk. And several princes, these were all noble class people. So this young man of the Sakya clan became also monks. And among them were his other cousins, Ananda and Devadatta. There were a few others also, quite well known also. Because during that time, the culture was, if the family has, young men of age already, leaving to become monks, it will be a very good thing, people will be very happy. For us, it's opposite. If somebody in the Chinese family leaves to become a monk, wow, the family are usually not happy, isn't it? But the culture at that time was opposite. And in Thailand today also is following like that. We're quite happy if somebody leaves. Or in Sri Lanka, like Chief Reverend at a young age, his mother was hoping that he would become a monk already. So his one is a cultural difference. So here this picture shows the Buddha asked Sariputta to ordain Rahula. Rahula became a very young monk. So that is this number 11. Now let us go on to number 12 now. This is slide number 12. So then, Buddha spent some time at his childhood place, Kapilawatu, and then he went around to preach. And many years passed again. He went back because the father was very, very sick already. He was getting old already, isn't he? Then 生老病死 old growth, old age, sickness, death, these are facts of life. So the father, King Suddhodana, was very ill. So the Buddha went back to see the old father. Actually, I just took a picture like this. Actually, this one might not be accurate. I couldn't find a picture where the Buddha visited the father. This one is a drawing. But this one just let you have an idea. This one actually probably was from another scene of the Buddha tending to a very sick monk. This was probably that scene. But I just want to show you, when a person is very, very old, so sick already, suffering pains of the body, everything. So the Buddha with the monks went to make them more comfortable and so on. But anyway, the king was very, very happy. The monk, very, very happy because he had already learned the Dhamma. Remember, he had also reached maybe a first stage of sainthood already. So the mind was quite good already. So he very felt better. He very felt better. So you see, from somebody who was very angry that the son that became a Buddha, he became a disciple in a way, and reached a very high stage of spirituality, like, first stage, Sotapan already, or things like that, because of listening to the Dhamma. So he passed away peacefully, which was natural. He couldn't resist the illness. So the Buddha, was there. And of course, human beings all would feel sad, but not the Buddha. The Buddha would not feel sad, or Arahants also, because they would accept it peacefully, no longer attached to all these worldly things, because those are facts of life, and they accept this. They could see very clearly. They have the perfect wisdom. Right? So these arahants are like that. So when Buddha passed away, all those monks that were arahants, his disciples, did not cry. They were very calm, peaceful, because they accepted this is a fact of life. But Ananda, who was not arahant yet, cried. He was quite attached. Only later he became arahant after Buddha passed away. So that is this very touching scene also. One event, very inspiring. Now let us go on to slide number 13 now. So when King Suddhodana died, Lady Prajapati, this version uses the term lady. Some version will use Queen Maha Prajapati Gautami. So you find when you read different versions, there will be different words, but the flow of the story is the same, right? So the lady, or you want to call it queen, actually she was the wife of King Suddhodana after the first wife had passed away. So Prajapati Gautami married the king. You can say now actually the stepmother of Siddhartha, of the Buddha. So she was very, very sad. She was a very, very nice person. So you see that the husband passed away. She was also quite old already. I don't know, maybe 60 or 70. The account did not say. So then, they decided, they say they would also renounce, they will leave the worldly life, and several other women, they will leave the worldly life and join the Buddha's group of monks to practice the Dhamma. They decided because they had also listened to the Dhamma, isn't it? When the Buddha returned, right? And so this particular lady Prajapati Gautami, who was the stepmother, so she led a group of women. And this group of women also had some Dhamma already because they had listened to the Dhamma when Buddha visited Kapilavatthu, isn't it? Right? So the queen, ex-queen, I can say, or Lady Prajapati, asked the Buddha to accept them, to ordain them as female nuns. But the Buddha refused. I mean, in the account, you find there are reasons all given, right? During that time, the culture was quite different from now. Now, modern times. But I won't have the time to go on to the various reasons why the Buddha refused. So the women felt very disappointed and cried. But they did not give up their wish to become nuns. They're very, very strong in their wish, right? It was a very, very interesting incident because you have to look into the culture during that time when the person, renounced, and then many of them would go to the forest to practice solitary, and it would be very dangerous for women to practice solitary and things like that, right? So to become a nun, right? So there are a lot of things they could not practice during that time, But now today different already. You can see conditions have changed, and after you see they have Buddhist nuns already now also. But you have to look in the context of history and the culture, right? So now let us go on to the next slide, which is slide number 14 already. You see, so remember what was the last slide, No. Now let us go on to the last slide first. That was the slide that this Prajapati Gautami went to ask the Buddha, isn't it? The first wife had died after 7 days of delivery. Queen Maya, remember? The Queen Maya. So this was the sister actually, right? And the Buddha refused. I told you the reason. Now let us go on to slide number 14 actually. So during that time, actually, the Buddha was residing at a particular monastery called Mahavaha Monastery. Right. So at that time, Venerable Ananda, that is the attendant of the Buddha, right? The very, very, the closest attendant, always with him, for many, many years, very, very close to the Buddha. So then the nuns, led by this lady Prajapati Gautami, was refused by the Buddha to be ordained. So they wanted to go and get the help of this Venerable Ananda. So they went to the monastery. I think this one you could see this Prajapati Gautami and asked Ananda for help. This drawing shows that. This is the big drawing of Ananda, Venerable Ananda. So they was very crying, they were still crying and so on, very sad. They could not be ordained as nuns by the Buddha. So they told Ananda all that happened. Then Ananda, felt compassion for them. They were very sincere, wanted to become nuns. So he said, don't worry, I will go and I'll go to see the Buddha and to get help from them. I promised you all, you see. So Ananda went to see the Buddha on his own, right? Privately, they didn't lead the nuns. The nuns were, at one part of the place, right? Not far away. Then later on, Ananda will bring back the news of what will be the outcome, you see. So he went to the Buddha to appeal. The Buddha refused also. But then Ananda, I think it was the third request at the time, asked the Buddha to be compassionate, to be merciful and let the women join the monastic order, particularly Lady Prajapati Gautami, right? So when the Buddha refused, I think 2 times, something like that, or even 3 times. So Ananda told the Buddha, he said, I beg you, Lord Buddha, please do a favor to Prajapati Gautami and accept her and other women as nuns, because this Prajapati Gautami, the mother who had looked after you, she has done you great favor in the past. She brought you up as her own son. Actually, you're very true, right? Really, Prajapati brought up the Buddha just as the own son Nanda, no discrimination. She loved him also, everything. So the Buddha reflected and thought about it. So he had his reasons, but then he relented lah. Then he said, all right, if they are willing to follow, so he set forth 8 monastic rules, rules for the Sangha members, for women, so he set forth. Probably it was suitable during that time, but some of the rules now you see maybe already had to be modified. That's why you have to understand certain things in the teachings got to suit the society and culture of that time in order to have peace. Otherwise, so there was a wisdom. But then the Buddha himself also said before he passed away, lesser and minor rules could be modified and changed. In fact, the rules are like that, you see, but the basic core cannot change, like killing always is a break of the precept, or stealing. But these are some of the cultural rules, and then made into precept, or made into a monastic rule. So you say, you tell them all these 8 monastic rules, I'm not going over them. All right, they can leave the home and then they can be renounced. And then they can renounce and become nuns. And he explained to Ananda this rule. So Ananda understood very clearly. And this is just a picture, which again might not be accurate. I couldn't find one. So, but anyway, it gives you the idea that Ananda appealed to the Buddha to let the stepmother become a nun, and also the rest of the lady followers who also were very devoted, right? Imagine during that time, until this case, all were monks only, bhikkhus, right? No nuns. So this is a very interesting incident in the life of the Buddha, of Lady Prajapati Gautami appealing to the Buddha to be ordained, to become nuns. And she and the rest of course refused, no consent, permission not given. And it was Ananda who begged the Buddha at after the third request order, the Buddha relented, but imposed certain rules. So you have to see that some of these rules, right, they were made for the harmony and peace during that time. But things changed, right? Like for example, let's say you have rules that you must be barefooted and so on, and then you wear the robe, that type where your shoulder exposed, all this now. But now you see Buddhism has spread to America, England, all over the world. And in certain countries, you have winter. So if all the monks were to be wearing like last time, follow the tradition, I think they might be frozen. So they will wear the winter clothing also, isn't it? And then also going for arms round, rules will be barefooted. But in certain countries, the place will be not suitable for you to be barefooted. It's winter time, right? So your feet might be frozen by the snow. So they wear shoes, isn't it? Like this venerable Sumido's place in England, you see, so they will wear shoes. So you see, that's the beauty of this, rules. The Buddha said, of course, lesser and minor rules you have to change, isn't it? Let's say you're not allowed to handle money, but you have to understand what's the meaning of handling money. But then nowadays monks travel to other countries to preach and so on. So, going to the toilets also, you have to, give certain coins or what, The fellows are not going to be so compassionate and say, oh, you're a monk, you don't even know what is a monk, everything. So they have to carry some coins probably. So a lot of changes, you have to use your wisdom and common sense. The important thing is you have to watch your mind to make sure that the mind doesn't have the greed, attachment, and then the ego, all those things. You're just using it for just to serve a certain purpose, but you're not attached to everything. So that's how lesser and minor rules can be modified. Like for example, you have a rule that you should not eat the monastics. If you are observing the Sangha rules, not you should not eat Theravada tradition. You should not eat before 12 or maybe 1, right? But I remember one incident when our association first building was to be declared open, official opening lah. So invited the late Chief Reverend Dhammananda. So he came, but then the VIP that was supposed to come, had some problems coming from Ipoh, I think. So there was a delay. We had already got ready all the food in the town hall, the Sangha Dana, and so on. So then the committee asked me to go and apologize to Chief Reverend Dhammananda that there will be a delay in the lunch, will be past 12 or even past 1, or maybe past 12 or maybe near 1 or this already. So I went to ask for forgiveness and to apologize. The monk was so wise, and he said, not to worry. When I was in Mongolia, I once had my lunch at 3 p.m. Wow, that was the wisdom I can still remember until now. So sometimes you have to be flexible. Certain things happen, you can't be helped. It's the mind. The mind is peaceful, not greedy, not attached. This is what I mean, right? By, adapt. But then I have to be very careful. Don't ambil chance, take chance and say, oh, this one can change, the one can change. That is going above the limit already. So I just give you an incident to understand things better. Okay, now let us go on to the 15 now, right? So slide number 15 now. Slide 15. So after leaving the Buddha consented with the rules, the 8 rules. Then Ananda went back to tell Lady Prajapati Gautami the good news. Wow, they were so happy, all the women were so happy. They say, no problem, we will observe the 8 rules conduct that the Buddha gave them. Because they also could understand during that time, right? No choice, wisdom to have peace and harmony, right? So the women all very, very happy. So Ananda then went back to the Buddha. He was something like a ambassador, negotiator. He went back to tell the Buddha, right? He said, Master, this lady Prajapati Gautami and all the friends already accepted all the 8 rules. They were very happy to follow the 8 rules that Bante, Venerable said lah. So then the Buddha said, right? So I told Ananda how a very simple ceremony ini lah, taking refuge, and then they would have the robes and the alms bowl. Not like, some very elaborate things, not like that. Very, very simple method only. So Prajapati became the first Buddhist nun in the history of Buddhism. Then, of course, there were the followers, but she was the leader, isn't it? Right? And she was quite an elderly nun already. The Buddha, how many years old? Enlightenment also 35. So you can imagine the mother must be an elderly woman already. That is just a drawing of the first Buddhist nun, the Venerable Prajapati Gautami. I think if I'm not mistaken, in the end, either she got enlightened as a arahant or reached a very high stage already. So, right? So this was the the news that Ananda brought to the nuns. This one I just put in the picture to show in modern day you have Buddhist Theravada nuns, right? This one I think is in Nepal. Now you have Buddhist nuns of the Theravada tradition, 那个南传的啦。Of course, in Mahayana, 北传, you have the lady nuns, and in Tibetan Buddhism also you have. But Theravada, follows the line of the story that I've been telling you lah. But now you can find, even in Australia, you have these Buddhist monks following the Theravada tradition, 南传的跟南传的. So you can see, and then also, as I told you, you can get the nuns in Sri Lanka also. Thailand and Burma are more strict in the sense they still stick on, because at one stage the lineage for the lady nuns, the Buddhist nuns broke already. So it stopped for some time already. Then after that, they didn't continue already. But today, you find the things are being revived. Like in Australia, you can get many very cultivated nuns also. Sri Lanka, of course, you have. And in Malaysia, you have our own local one who is going to start a nunnery, Venerable Sumangala. She's doing excellent job. She is a very, very cultivated Buddhist nun of the Theravada tradition. So now we come to the last slide. That is slide number 16. It's similar to the previous parts, because this is the very important aspiration that we make. So I repeat the last slide basically. So we will make this aspiration, right? Firstly, we hope Yen Wang may we be inspired by the life of the Buddha. For each part of the story, when you contemplate or reflect on some happenings, think about the Dhamma and say you can be really inspired. Like for example, this particular part 4, there are many accounts that are quite inspiring, isn't it? Meeting with the family, and then Rahula became a monk, and then later on he became Arahan also, and then Majapati, and many things. So every part has its happenings that can really inspire you. So then the next one is, may we strive on in the Dhamma to end dukkha. Yes. Once you're inspired by the life of the Buddha, then you will want to follow his Dhamma. You want to follow his teachings. And of course, the most important part is the Noble Eightfold Path. So then you make this resolution or this Yuan Wang that you will strive on in the Noble Eightfold Path so that all dukkha, all suffering can end. So that's the next part of the aspiration. So now we've come to the end. Before we say sadhu 3 times, right? I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the boys and girls, all students, the students of Buddhist Sunday School, Dhamma classes, and youth members, and also all the teachers of Buddhist Sunday School, Dhamma classes, parents, grandparents, and also all who have been following this presentation. So it says sadhu to all of you. Thank you for taking time and putting in the effort to watch this quite long presentation, part 4. Another time, we will continue into part 5 to look at some other events of the Buddha. So now let us put our palms together and say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. To all who have been following the presentation, sadhu to all of you, and may you all be well, happy, peaceful, and may you strive on in the Dhamma. Take care.